Joining us here today on a possibly stormy Tuesday night. And thank you guys for making time for us this summer. And I just posted in the chat, but some people might not have seen. Please rename yourself with your first name and last initial, your state abbreviation, city, and pronouns. And there's some instructions in the chat on how to do that. This will help us to make breakout rooms by region at the end of this meeting. And I think next slide, Mustafa. There we go. We want to make sure that everyone can easily follow along with the training. So you can turn on closed captions by selecting the closed captions icon in the Zoom toolbar on the desktop. If you're on mobile and you don't see the closed captioning button, you'll need to select the back arrow in the top left of your screen, then the settings gear icon, then meetings, then enable the show closed captioning when available toggle button. If you're having any difficulty doing so, please message us in the chat and we will try to help if we can. All right. We seem to have, there we go. Here we go. And we're going to start off today by sharing our agenda for the night, starting with our community agreements. These are norms that we want to establish to build community and help all of you get the most out of the training. And we're also going to talk about our goals for tonight. We're going to recap the importance of storytelling and what specifically is the story of self. This is what we talked about on the last training. We'll do an introduction to relational organizing, which is what today's training is about. We'll then practice one-on-ones in breakout rooms and debrief our conversations and talk about next steps afterwards. All right, before we fully jump in, we want to remind you all of our community agreements. They're intended to set norms that will encourage participation, community building, and maximize participants' ability to get the most out of the training. I'd like to go around and have 4 different people read these community agreements and ask that everyone agree to these. So you can virtually or in your camera view raise your hand if you feel comfortable sharing one of these. And I saw Kwesi first, so go ahead with number 1.
Hey, Michelle. Okay,
Hey.
so for number one, it says safe space, brave space. Learning new things can be uncomfortable and challenging, requiring us all to be brave and step into our own discomfort. But our ability to be brave rests on the foundation of feeling safe, of being seen, heard, and respected. Whenever possible, strive to build a space that is both safe and brave.
Thanks, Kwesi. Do we have a volunteer for number 2? Go ahead, Claire.
Sure. So number 2 is take space, make space. Be aware of the space you are or are not taking up. If you have been participating a lot, try making space for others. If you've not participated very much, try taking up more space.
Wonderful. Thank you. Do we have a volunteer for number 3? Go ahead, Jamie.
What's shared here stays here. What's learned here leaves here. People may share things about themselves and their stories that are personal. Let's hold confidentiality for one another by only sharing our learnings, not other people's stories outside of the space.
That's one of my favorite ones. Thank you, Jamie. And last but not least, number 4. Do we have a volunteer?
I can do it.
Thank you.
Be present and lean in. Engage meaningfully and authentically in the conversation that's going on in the virtual room, not the one on your phone.
Which is funny because some of us are probably on this meeting on our phones. But these are some of the norms that we're going to move forward with today. If you know how, if you're able, can I get a thumbs up from everyone who can commit to these community agreements? I see some thumbs up. I'll do it myself. There we go. And before moving forward again, now that I think we have majority of our people here, I want to remind everyone to please rename yourself with your first and last initial, state abbreviation, city, and pronouns. You can do this in Zoom by right-clicking on your name and editing your name. And renaming yourself this way will help us to set up our breakouts for later in the meeting. And there should be some instructions in the chat. And we can go to the next slide. As a reminder, the Summer Skill Up series is a training series for volunteers, partners, and members of the public that want to skill up on their organizing to help build a more powerful and organized constituency of people who care about climate justice. In order to accomplish a just transition to a fossil-free future, we need all of us. Each of you can be a hub for sharing information and pushing for change, and that's why we're doing a training series that brings together CCAN members, activists, and partners that we work with. This is a breakdown of the series. Last month, we covered organizing theory, how you can organize people and move them to take action, and how you can demonstrate power. Tonight, we're covering relational meetings, a primary tactic we use to build connections with a prospective volunteer and talk about what issues, interests, and values we have in common and how we could work together. And then next month, we will cover power mapping, which is a tool we use that helps to assess how we can best position ourselves to get a decision maker to do what we want them to do. At the end of last month's training, we concluded with a video example of a story of self, which is a story that articulates what experiences and values have shaped this person's life that have called them to act in this way and in this time. We use an example from our staff person, Lauren. However, this time we will hear a story of self from a Northern Virginia volunteer case. Storytelling is a primary way that you can recruit and organize people to join your network. There are many times when you may want to share your story of self, when you're writing a letter to the editor, when you're giving a public comment, when you're meeting with your local legislator. But today we're going to talk about the time when you will most frequently share your story, when you're building connections with your fellow activists. Most of us come to movements and stay in them because we share values with the people we meet, we have common sets of experiences or common interests. But how do you build that connection with someone? How do you even find out that you have a shared value or a common story? Tonight, we're going to talk about the one tried and true method that you can use to do that through the one-on-one conversation or the relational meeting. It's called that because the goal of the conversation is to set the foundation for a relationship between you, the organizer, and the person being one-on-one, the organizee. I'll pass it to Isla to talk about story of self.
Cool. Um, Thank y'all. So, a story of self is a story that communicates the values that called you to lead and get involved in the movement that you're involved in. Um, let's do a group brainstorm and talk a little bit more about the story of self. Um, I want to hear from you all. Why do you think we're talking about storytelling in a training about organizing? Feel free to raise your hand or type it into the chat, and another organizer can read aloud the uh, ones in the chat if you all don't mind.
We have some in
Actually,
the chat. Um, People remember the emotion of stories best. That's what Sam K is saying. We have Emily K saying hearing firsthand accounts of story of organizing. Um, Lena says stories are so much more engaging and are more likely to persuade and connect than statistics. So that's Lois. And wow, we have a lot of things being written into the chat. Pam says it helps elicit empathy. Neil is saying to connect with others. Gretchen, people are born storytellers and remember emotions. Jamie, stories are things people can relate to and they will remember them. Claudia says helps all of us understand how climate affects us personally. And our Mariana White says, I know when Virginia was trying to get Medicaid for all, they got people to share stories, and it was very powerful to hear people's actual situations. Mary Hill says it builds solidarities, and Jim says helps to better connect with everyone.
definitely. yeah, I'm hearing this like common theme of um yeah, bringing a little emotion to the way we talk about this. Definitely, you know, helps us relate to one another, remember the conversation, demonstrates a bit of vulnerability, and that can in turn, inspire the other person to be a little vulnerable, get out of their comfort zone, take on some leadership that they might have been a little nervous to do. Um, Ruth, go ahead and come off mute. I'd love to hear from you.
This is a little philosophical, but I'm reading a novelist intro to her best-selling novel, and she says, um, while reading, we believe every word, but this is true of a story, that every book is a metaphor story. And um, if it's good, we find we're a little bit different than we were before, that we've been changed a little. And um, we're open to a new world. And that is what our stories do. They're a way to change people's perspective.
Definitely. That's really beautiful. And I think it's definitely true that humans are born storytellers. It's a lot easier for us to like conceptualize and remember a story about climate change and, the heat that we were feeling because of climate change than maybe like a number about how hot it was that day because we have always been telling stories
Well,
as
they allow us to enter in. I'm getting a whole new perspective on this. They allow us to enter into another human person's experience that reminds us of our own.
It builds solidarity in that
Mhm.
way. It inspires us to work together. It helps us, hearing how one person's affected by the issue also helps you kind of reflect on how it impacts you as well. Um, I'm just reading through the chat. I see storytelling is oral history. Very true. The best arguments in the world won't change a person's mind. The only th thing that can do that is a good story. Well put. I love the overstory. Speaking of good stories, and that's why we, are talking about storytelling today because what we're trying to do is change people's mind to change the world, change legislators' minds, change your neighbor's mind to get them to take action with us. So, yeah, just wanted to start the conversation today by grounding us in that. And thank you all for sharing. Um, Next up, I want to invite Case, who is a volunteer from Northern Virginia, to share his story of self. Case came to our training last month and he used our worksheet to prepare a story of self. Afterwards, as a group, we'll celebrate and debrief the story. Um, and
Thank you, Ayla.
go ahead. No problem.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you
Okay,
great.
perfect. Hi everyone. I'm Case. I live in Arlington, Virginia, as mentioned, and I've been attending a number of CCN meetings. So really exciting to share my story. As everyone mentioned, sort of stories are important ways to connect with people, I think, and sort of share your own experiences with others. So I grew up overseas in the Middle East, and I witnessed firsthand some of the effects of poor environmental policies and climate change. This included desertification, water shortages, destruction of local fauna. I remember, for example, like every morning we had to fill water in our water pump, so that we could have enough water, and we had to ration, for example, for showering. And this was like, a few decades ago. I mean, the effects have just gotten worse. And today, while living in Arlington, I mean, we were all experiencing sort of the extreme weather events that are happening on a more regular basis, I'd say. So, for a long time, I kind of assumed that policymakers and international organizations kind of had everything under control. I quickly realized that was not the case, kind of overwhelmed with all the news stories and reports that were coming out. And so I kind of felt despondent. But a few years ago, I was working for an international grant making organization. And in this job, I worked firsthand giving money to civil society organizations across the world. A couple of them that I worked with worked actually on climate issues. So, for example, there was one that really stuck out to me. There was a group that was mobilizing local youth um, on the topic of protecting local beaches in Beirut, Lebanon. And I mean, this was fully youth activated. They were pushing back against private development that was happening to build resorts and hotels on these hotels. It was, sorry, on this beach. It was destroying sort of local wildlife. It was preventing people from enjoying the beach. And so they were able to mobilize these very large protests. They even did sort of a coastal mapping as a tool to use for advocacy for legislative change. So it was incredibly impressive, honestly, that in a situation, an environment that difficult, that they were able to mobilize and work so hard. So I thought to myself, why not me? Why not try and volunteer locally and myself? I mean, the issues are still relevant here as well. Um, and so I looked at ways to get involved. I very much care about the environment. I love animals. And so CCAN was one of the groups that I saw that were very active at the local level near where I live. And I've been very happy to sort of find ways to get engaged. And so, for example, filling out the worksheet, joining the training sessions that we're in right now. So these are sort of concrete ways that I've been able to impact, including earlier this year, for example. I was with among a group of CCAN people who met with our local state senator, Barbara Favola, to talk to her about a number of issues, including data center legislation, green energy, balcony solar. So that's a very quick sort of story of where I come from and why this is important to me.
Yay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, we really love, the purpose of this meeting is to hear everyone's story. So really appreciate that. Um, and I will start facilitating a debrief with the group. I want to start with the question, what resonated with you in Case's story? You can raise your hand or put it in the chat. Go ahead, Jamie.
I think when he was talking about the group of kids that mobilized and decided that they were going to protect the beaches for the public and not just, um, yeah, just let the developers turn them all into hotels. So, I think that seemed to catch his attention. And so it caught my attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that, and I hear a bit of like optimism in the way you talked about that. Like you have a lot of faith in organizing and working with the youth and groups to make changes. Um, Nancy, what resonated with you?
The fact that he's so eloquent about that the climate change is not in the future. It's
Mm-hmm.
now. Yeah, it's now. We can plan for it, but we need to react to what's the damage that's already been done, and to work effectively, like the children have to prevent future damage, but recognizing that it's not just going to happen; it is happening.
Yeah, I think talking about something as visceral as water shortages, which I also resonate with a bit growing up in California, is a really like grounding way to talk about climate change in a concrete kind of way that we've all sort of felt. Go ahead, Kwesi.
Hey, what's up, everybody? For me, what resonated with Kay's story was just kind of wanting and giving attention to like legislators taking climate change and environmental protection seriously. That was something that kind of got me more into volunteering with CCAN. Although I am currently the mobility lead, which is a volunteer position with CCAN, for me, I find it kind of cool how starting at the local level is something that's emphasized with CCAM. Whether it's maintaining professional relationships or just, kind of being able to invite a friend to an event and kind of seeing if they can provide a time commitment with volunteering. But overall, I kind of just enjoy CCAN and kind of how it provides a local focus on what are things we can do within our community or change within our community that starts kind of at the base head of, for example, a legislator like a delegate or a senate.
Hmm.
instead of kind of always aiming for a national or federal level, such as a senator or governor. How can we create a chain of communication that can kind of help us complete our end goal for the most part?
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like he did a good job of sharing, ways, like specific examples of ways he's been involved with CCAN and other organizations, building the future he wants to see. I also want to uplift in the chat what um, Lena said about describing his despondency and this like assumption that other people will solve it. And then the like kind of disillusionment of realizing that other person solving it isn't going to come. I feel like that is a really big kicker for me, something I resonate with. And I think like tying in those emotions is, super valuable because it allows us all to kind of, I can imagine a lot of us here on this call can connect to that feeling of waiting for someone else to do something and getting to a point where you realize you need to be here, making the change. Um, yeah, also great job with keeping it personal and short and focused. I, Case, I really like how you shared examples of how you can organize with CCAN to make change. And I think as you continue to work on it, even ending the story with like a specific call to action to the audience of, I want you to do this thing with me tomorrow is a really helpful um, way to close out the story with a concrete commitment. But really a great job and thanks for sharing with us. And I'll pass it off to Mustafa.
Great. I just want to flag that we have a worksheet, and I know one of the organizers can plug, maybe Isla can plug the worksheet into the chat for folks. And that Case used the worksheet to come up with their story. That includes the building blocks of good storytelling for motivating people to take action. So I encourage folks to use that. Okay, cruising right along. So what is a one-on-one? The one-on-one meeting, it's a tool that helps us establish and maintain and just to grow our relationships and organizing. And specifically, the goals of one-to-one recruitment are to make personal connections, or to use your personal story to identify, engage potential interests, and probe for a shared experience and connect on values. And lastly, pivot to engagement, that is, move the volunteer to action based on what you've discussed. So there are three things you need to do to set up your one-on-one. One, you need to get it scheduled. You need to have a set time and a place to be meeting. And you need to, number two, set up the expectations for the one-on-one. The goal of the one-on-one is to build relationships based on shared values. You don't want to dissect the ins and outs of your favorite climate policy with them or only talk about all the great things CCAN is doing. You want to build a relationship with them, and you want to set that expectation with them when you're trying to schedule it. And then number three, to share your story of self. So, and to be prepared to do that. This allows you to show your values rather than tell them what your values are. And by sharing that story in a one-on-one meeting, it allows someone to get to know you and indicates to them that it's okay for them to share their story as well. Okay, so there are three types of one-on-ones. There's a recruitment one-on-one. So the goal for this is to make a personal connection. You're trying to share your own story, probe for the shared experiences. You're trying to recruit people to get them to take action. Number two is a maintenance one-on-one. So this is where you're trying to, catch up with a volunteer. Maybe they haven't. Maybe they're maybe they're a lobby captain in a leadership position, and you want to make sure that they're continuing to build up their lobbying team and that you're supporting them. Right? That would be a maintenance one-on-one to make sure that you're offering the coaching that they need to do the role that they've set out to do. And then an escalation one-on-one. So this is where somebody's knocking it out of the park with their role. and you see a great opportunity for them to lean into their leadership more, you would want them to, you want to take on that new role. That's what you would do an escalation one-on-one for. So, for example, also could apply to just somebody who's like come to a rally and you want to ask them, to help with logistics for the next event. That would be having an escalation one-on-one. So just a couple of key components for a successful one-to-one meeting. This is a two-way conversation that we're trying to have with people. So make sure that you're sharing about yourself as well as asking good open-ended questions and actively listening. So one is the purpose. As I mentioned before, be upfront about the why, the context for setting up this meeting, why you're setting up this meeting. Number two is what we call exploration. So most of the one-on-one is devoted to actually this stage of it. It's you're trying to ask probing questions. You're trying to ask questions that help you understand their story, values, the resources that may be relevant to your shared purpose. Number three is the exchange. This is specifically leaning into that resources piece. So you may try to gauge just what skills that they could be bringing to the table. Maybe this is somebody that does event planning, right? Or it's somebody that has really has experience doing policy research. You want to gauge what their skills and their resources are, and you want to share what are the resources that you're bringing to the table as well. And then number four, a commitment. One-on-ones, they have to really end with a commitment. And the commitment could be, even if you're not sure how you're going to work together, but it's a great conversation, you want to continue it, schedule that next one-on-one right then and there. And then number five, which sometimes happens, is catapult. If you're meeting with somebody and they're extremely motivated, they make the commitment, they want to extend their impact. You can make an additional ask for them that essentially escalates their engagement. Okay. Often when we are meeting new, sorry, Ting, you go
That's
ahead.
okay.
My apologies.
That's okay. So when you are having a recruitment one-on-one with somebody and meeting for them for the first time, you might feel the need to plug them directly into all of our campaigns at once. You might have a kind of sense of urgency with it, but it's important to remember that this is the start of a relationship and that the main goal of the initial one-on-one is to connect on shared values and not to just mobilize people to get them to show up to whatever the next thing is that's happening. It's not the last time you'll ever see this person, and you don't need to get them to take on a leadership role in the campaign right away. And your commitment can be as simple as let's chat again next week. What you ask of this person should come at the end of the conversation. You should ask once you feel like you actually have a clear understanding of their values and their interests and the resources and skills that they bring to the table. And then you should make an ask that enables both of you to work together towards a common purpose. So, for example, um, say you are meeting with this person because you attended this summer skill up training and they live in your area and you think you should organize together. That is your purpose for the meeting. Next comes exploration. So an organizee, the person you are meeting and organizing, may say something like, "I grew up in Baltimore City, near the Bresco trash incinerator, a major polluting site. People who live near that site have higher rates of asthma and other public health issues, and that's why I want to get polluting infrastructure out of communities." Um, and in that case, you can then have an exchange. That person laid out some pretty clear values and motivations. And so I might share an opportunity that we have coming up that's fighting back against polluting infrastructure, such as data centers, or any fossil fuel infrastructure fights. So I would give the necessary context to get that person to say yes to that next step in whatever that campaign is. And it sounds like also this person just moved to this city and is looking for community. So I would also want to take that into account. It sounds like they want to be out and about doing a stewardship event. And so I would both share about our campaign, but also think about plugging them into something that will actually have them meeting other people and being involved in the community. Um, Whoa, I'm still on the previous slide. We're fiddling back and forth. Okay. So next comes commitment. You make a commitment by asking somebody a smart ask. And it's something that people often struggle with at first, and that is perfectly okay. But a smart ask is a learned skill, and it should be clear exactly what you're asking them to do. It's a commitment to take action, attend an event, or sign a petition, and it should be directly connected to the person's interests, skill sets, and/or capacities. And it should be in line to actually help with whatever campaign goals you are trying to achieve. Um, like I said earlier, they also don't have to be action-based. If the best fit is for you to meet again with that person to continue building a relationship, then that is also a great smart ask for a lot of people. When you formulate a smart ask, you should keep in mind their shared values and interests. You should connect it to their skills. You should make sure it's impactful to the work, set a timeline with a specific next step. And for this person, this hypothetical person we're talking about, I might invite them to a tabling event that we've already scheduled, where we'll be asking people to sign a petition supporting a moratorium on data centers, for example. The catapult. Um, this again is an opportunity to escalate that person if they are particularly enthusiastic or bring like more specific skills or offerings to the table. And it's not something that happens in every one-on-one. But this could be a good opportunity to get an especially motivated person, not just to come to an already scheduled tabling event or meeting with you, but to maybe help host one at their local farmers market or work with you to distribute flyers to bulletin boards in their community or something like that. Next slide, please. A lot of times people say yes to the smart ask, which is awesome, but they also say no, and that's okay. And when having conversations, we need to pay attention to why someone is saying no. That can give us more insight into how we can continue to work together, and it often helps shape the conversation. We need to respect the boundaries that folks set for themselves, and we need to hear them. And we need to also know and communicate that there's space for many ways to be involved in climate justice work. So that's why getting more information is an essential follow-up step. These are the three types of reasons on this slide that organizers commonly get told no. You will hear not now, you will hear not that, and you will also hear not ever. So when it's not now, you might be able to pivot to a different ask because maybe there's a scheduling conflict. When it's not that, you can maybe find an activity that is a better fit for them because maybe they found whatever you were asking them to do a little too far outside of their comfort zone. And when it's not ever, you need to hear them also and say, like, that's okay. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me. And maybe you can give that person a virtual or very quick way that they can support, like signing a petition. So you need to sometimes ask follow-up questions or two to gauge why the person is telling you no and adjust your ask accordingly. And now I'm going to pass it to Michelle, and we are going to have some Q&A. Next slide.
So I know that we just,
I think let's keep on just moving because we're a few minutes behind and people can raise questions in the breakout.
okay. And if you have an urgent question,
Yeah.
feel free to put it in the chat and we can answer you there.
Yeah. Great. Okay. All right. So we're gonna go into the doing a modeling. We're gonna show a model of a one-on-one. So this is an abbreviated example. This is like a 5-minute one-on-one, and this one-on-one is not perfect. It does some things well and does some things not so well, which is expected given that it's a 5-minute long conversation. However, it will help you all see what the components of the one-on-one are in action, and then we will debrief it together. So let's pay attention to how Anjali sets up the one-on-one and how she tries to build a relationship in the ask that she makes. And then we'll do a debrief of it.
Hi. In this video, you'll see me doing a one-on-one conversation with Jeff, a potential new recruit. Pay attention to who's doing most of the talking, how I ask questions to draw out our shared values, and how I make sure to get a commitment from him so he can become more actively involved. Hi.
Hi, I'm Jeff.
Anjali, so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Did you find the coffee shop okay?
Yeah, thank you for the directions.
I'm so glad that Sarah connected us.
Yeah, me too.
You're not from Boston originally.
No, I'm not. I'm from Rockland, New York. It's the suburbs outside the city, and I came to Boston a few years ago for school.
Oh, okay. What's Rockland like?
It's really boring. There's a lot of shopping malls and parking lots, basically.
My hometown is actually Shelton, Connecticut, and sounds very similar. We have the only wiffle ball factory in the world, so it's like our one claim to fame. I'd really like to get to know you a little bit better and tell you about this organization, Boston Educators for Social Justice, that I work with, because I think there might be some interest there. When did you start caring about public education?
I feel like I've really always cared about education for a long time.
So since you were little, since you were young?
Yeah, so both my parents are immigrants, and my mom always told me that they came to this country so that I could get a good education. So she really made me take it seriously.
Yeah, both of my parents are actually immigrants too, from India. Where did your parents immigrate from?
So my dad came from Bulgaria, and my mom was born in Tunisia, and they both met in France, and then I was born in New York.
Yeah, my parents kind of sent a similar message to me. In India, education is really important. I had this one really good teacher in 3rd grade named Mrs. Leadham, who was kind of the one teacher that made me feel really creative and heard. Did you have good teachers in your school experience?
There are a few that stand out. One for me is definitely Mr. Alexander in 8th grade, who taught English and always affirmed my writing. He was really cool, and he was just a really fun teacher too.
Sarah told me you got interested in education when you were in Philly, but it sounds like you had a good experience. When did you get interested?
They closed 24 public schools in Philly a few years ago when I was there, because they said that there wasn't enough money for public education in the city. And I volunteered for a community organization and actually got to know a lot of public school students, and they would tell me that in their schools they didn't even have enough books, they didn't have nurses or guidance counselors because of all the budget cuts. So I was like, wow, how is that possible that, I went to good public schools where we had everything we needed, and yet these students in Philly didn't have access to the most basic things.
I'm wondering why it mattered to you so much what was going on in Philly, if your own experience was a good one.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I said, I think it really comes from what my mom used to teach me. Education is really important. Everybody should be able to have access to a good education. So I think it's not fair that some people get to have it, and a lot of people don't.
I've actually gotten involved with Boston Educators for Social Justice because they're doing a lot of the work, like it sounds what was happening in Philly, trying to really get students the support that they need. So we actually are having this big training for our group on Friday, November 10th at 6 p.m. I think it sounds like it's something you would really enjoy, Jeff. Do you think you'd be able to make it that Friday?
That sounds interesting, but I'm really busy with school right now. I have papers, I have to study. I don't really have the time right now.
The meeting we're having on Friday is actually about cuts that have been made to 2 specific schools, and I think you could contribute a lot to the conversation because of this interest that you bring. And I'm actually driving there, so I could pick you up on the way to the meeting. I'll be driving right by campus. And I have your phone number. I could just text you and scoop you up on my way. Does that sound okay?
It seems like this problem is really happening everywhere, so I feel like I should get involved and do something about it. And if you could give me a ride, that would make it a lot easier for me. So, yeah.
Mustafa, you're muted. You are still muted. And you're still muted. Yeah.
Double muted. My apologies.
There you go.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. All right. So I just want to do just a quick popcorning. What did folks hear? How did Anjali establish at the beginning of the meeting? How did she? What was? Why were they meeting? What was the context? Just feel free to come off mute. Yeah, popcorn it. Go ahead, Claire.
So it sounds like I didn't get the full name. I think it was like Boston Public Educators or Boston Educators or something. It was some kind of promoting and supporting public schools in the Boston area. It sounded like she was trying to recruit him to be engaged in that.
Yeah, and she specifically says this person Sarah had connected them, but doesn't mention or remind Jeff of why they got connected. Actually, specifically, I mean, she does bring up this Boston Educators, but the link there is actually kind of missing. Let's go to the next question. Maybe Marianne, you can help with this. Did Anjali ask probing questions? And if so, what was an example of the question, and what did we learn?
Well, she was asking what got him interested in education as an issue. So she got some background on his story, and then later asked, well, why was he worried about education in Philly, since he had already had a good education.
That's right. And Jeff mentions that, he became interested in education when Philly closed 24 schools because there wasn't enough money for public education in the city. If we had an opportunity to have a longer conversation with Jeff, I would love to probe into that. What was that like? What did you like? What were the resources that you were seeing that were getting cut from these students, and how was it impacting their lives? There's a lot more to dig into there in a longer form conversation. But it's exactly right. And so we start to get a clear sense of Jeff's values and the intersecting values between the two of them and their shared interests. And so did they share was there any resources or information that was shared in terms of what could be bringing to the table? In terms of their skills or the resources that we learned about Jeff or Anjali?
Angelis was talking about the upcoming event and how his knowledge would be helpful um, in discussing in the discussion at the next meeting.
That's right. That's exactly right. So we have Anjali does a good job of identifying somebody that has some expertise and personal experience that could be helpful to this work, and is trying to make that that ask to him to be able to show up. And what was so building off of that, for last question, for maybe somebody else can chime in. Did Anjali end up making a smart ask? You could see that, she makes this ask and Jeff says, he's really busy, he's not sure that he can do it. And how does Anjali follow up? Neil, go ahead.
I was very impressed. Yeah, she took a no and turned it into a yes by just kind of asking him again and saying she could make it easy for him to get there. And what the prior person mentioned, that how his experience in this could be super helpful.
That's right. And Claudia.
Yeah, I actually was sort of stunned that she kind of didn't hear him when he said, "I'm really not sure I could make it." She was like, "Well, listen, I'm going to text you. I'll take your number. I could stop by and pick you up." I mean, for me personally, I was like, hang on, sister, you didn't even hear what he said. Like, I was sort of surprised. He just sort of steamrolled him into like joining them. So I personally thought it was kind of shocking.
Yeah, it's important, as when you're doing these one-on-ones and you're making these asks, when somebody says no, to make sure we understand why they're saying no. Because they could be saying no because they don't have a car, or that wherever the meeting is not accessible by public transit or something like that. Now, if that is specifically the challenge and it's going to take them 3 hours to get there or something because of that, then of course driving solves that challenge and picking them up. But I think you're absolutely right, Claudia, that in a longer form conversation, that would be the next question I would ask is, well, is there a way we can make this easier for you, or in terms of your time?
Yeah, and I thought, she could continue that those offers, but maybe start by saying, hey, if it's if you're challenged because it's, hard to get to, or you think it might take a long time to take public transport, whatever it was, like offering to drive him and text him and everything, she could have offered those in a little bit softer manner that was sort of like, hey, I want to help solve whatever challenges you may have to getting to the meeting. But
That's right. So we should take away that when somebody says no, we should make sure that we try to raise the question to help us understand why they're saying no, before we try to really push the envelope. Okay, great. Well, so I'm going to pass it. Actually, we're going into our breakouts, and Xander has set us up into breakouts. Xander, is there anything you want to say just in terms of the prompting folks to get into the right breakouts here?
That I'm thrilled you all are with us, and this is a great chance to practice this skill, and there's nothing to it but to just start practicing. And not everyone will have a CCAN staffer with you right at the beginning. Mustafa, are you going to go through those prompts?
Yeah.
Okay. Then no, you're good.
Yeah.
You will see a invitation on your screen that say you're being put into a breakout room. And if you don't see that, stick around in the main room, and Mustafa and Aaron, namely Aaron, will help you get there.
And before we go into the breakouts, all of you are being put into these groups that correspond with your region. So, and some organizers are going to have, two groups or 3 groups, but they're going to start off by joining group number 1 in their breakout or in their region. And so when the organizer joins, you will do an 8-minute one-on-one practice and then 2 minutes of debriefing with them. So somebody will play the role of organizer, someone will play the role of organizee, and you'll get some coaching from the staff organizer. And that way, some people have the opportunity to practice, and then everybody will have the opportunity to observe. And you will find the prompt for the one-on-ones on page 1 of your relationship building handout. I think if somebody can share that in the chat. But basically, you are participants in the Summer Skill Up series, and you're being asked to get to know each other better and see if there are ways we can collaborate. It's the beginning of a real one-on-one. So one-on-ones are usually 30 or 45 minutes. Unless they have a commitment ask that emerges from the conversation, you can just default to the ask of scheduling a follow-up one-on-one. And you should really do it, actually, coming out of this. Once they complete the one-on-one practice, the organizers will move to their next group and do the practice. And when the organizer is not with you, we are strongly encouraging all of you to engage in discussion that will help with the building of community, which also is in that, I believe in the handout on page 1 of the handout that is being shared with you. So just asking open-ended questions. What's brought you to this training? What experiences or choices have brought you to fighting back against climate change? Learn more about each other's values and just experiences of what's informing your choices with your activism. And so we're going to wrap up the breakout at 7:20 and then shift you into a larger breakout room by your entire region, where your organizer will have a debriefing conversation with you and talk to you about next steps. So with that in mind, I think we can go ahead and get into the breakouts.